Today I'm travelling along the A83 between Perth and Blairgowrie, and I thought I'd stop and let you see some of the fantastic, beautiful views you can get along this road. I mean, Scotland is one of the bonniest places in the world. Here we're looking towards the mountains to the west. Hi everybody. Today we're in the wonderful location of Kinclaven Castle. The castle at one time would have been one of the biggest in Perthshire. Now, as you can see, it's almost completely forgotten. It sits between Perth and Blairgowrie, and I will be telling you about William Wallace and his connections to the castle and some legends about the site. I hope you enjoy. Kinclaven Castle sits on the banks of the River Tay, about 12 miles north of Perth. It stands between the city of Perth and the town of Blairgowrie. It sits on high ground and is protected on three sides by the river. The castle, which at one time would have been one of the biggest and most important in Perthshire, is now a ruin. It sits lost and almost completely forgotten, not visited for months at a time. But if these stones could speak, what tales and legends they could give us. The castle was built by Malcolm Canmore in the 11th century, and his queen, Margaret, later Saint Margaret, came here to receive homage from all the Celtic magnates, lords and chiefs. This was one of the favourite castles of King Alexander II, and while he was staying here in 1264, a carriage of wine was taken to the castle to supply the royal guests and the household. In 1297, Scotland was at war with the might of England. Things did not start well, with the Scots army being defeated at the Battle of Dunbar, and the capture and forced exile of King John I. Scotland looked defeated, but two men would fight back, William Wallace and Andrew de Murray, and these two would shatter an English army at the Battle of Stirling Bridge in September 1297. Before the Battle of Stirling Bridge, William Wallace was hiding in Medvin Woods. This was a vast woodland around the modern village of Medvin, west of Perth. Wallace and his men often hid in the forest of Medvin. It was too vast and dense for the English to find them. William Wallace heard that the English garrison in Perth were planning to send 90 mounted troops to reinforce the garrison at Kinclaven Castle. William Wallace, an expert guerrilla fighter, decided this was an opportunity far too good to miss. After scouting the land, Wallace had his men lay in ambush. As the English cavalry passed, the Scots pounced. A running battle took place, and in this about 60 of the English horsemen were slain. The other 30 managed to flee towards the castle, which they reached with the Scots in hot pursuit. Wallace's men gained entry into Kinclaven, and in the fighting all of the garrison were massacred, including the women. Whether this act of slaughter happened is open to question. It might be English propaganda, or perhaps this was done by Wallace in response to the English King Edward I ordering all the inhabitants, every man, woman and child of Scotland's biggest port, Berwick-upon-Tweed, killed after he captured the city. In an orgy of violence, it was said Edward only stopped the killing when he saw a woman being massacred as she gave birth to her child. This was a brutal, savage war. In the fighting at the castle, William Wallace was said to have killed the English commander, Sir James Butler. The English went on to retake the castle, and it changed hands several times during the Wars of Independence. Edward II of England retook the castle, and it's said that he stayed here for a couple of nights. As you can see, There's not much left of the castle now. The walls do stand to a fair height, many metres high. You can also see how strong this castle has been at one time. It would have had a high curtain wall around it, most probably towers on the corners. You can see where this area's had big windows on the curtain wall, perhaps the chapel. There's also what looks like a postern gate, a gate in the curtain wall where people could slip in and out of, carrying messages, or perhaps just so that the main gates did not have to be opened.
Explore Castle Menzies after dark.
Is it really haunted?
Is it really haunted?
Book now to find out.
If you dare.
You can see this is where the main gates were. This is probably where William Wallace entered the castle as he chased the fleeing English cavalry. Wallace would not have had the men or resources to lay siege to the castle, so he must have got through these gates before the English had time to close them after letting their own forces through. The courtyard would have been a bustling, busy place, with buildings built up against the curtain wall. There would be living quarters, a brewer, stables for horses, blacksmiths. It would have been a place full of life, chatter, laughter. Another legend from the castle involves the man who killed the rebel leader Simon de Montfort at the Battle of Evesham in England in 1265. At one time, this man was a member of the castle garrison. The knight was playing around with some young maidens in the castle when he went down to the river bank to wash mud from his hands. One of the young women crept up behind him and playfully pushed him into the river. He took this in good humour and laughed and splashed about in the water, but he was struck either by cramp in the river or got caught in the current. You can see this is a part of the river where the Tay and the River Isla merge, so there would be a lot of undercurrents, strong undercurrents in the water. The man soon got into difficulties. This man's young son was standing on the river bank. He saw his father struggle in the water. He jumped in to the water to try and save his dad. Both were swept away and drowned. The Scotsman newspaper on the 2nd of August 1933 tells of a local song sung by the women gathering the cattle that remembers this drowning. And it goes, I'm not going to sing it, but I will say it. I'll be drowned in Isla water, I'll be found in Isla stream. Bonnie babby me forsaken, o who will I win hame? The weary dree came in my moo, I'll drink it a' or I go hame. Bonnie babby me forsaken, o who will I win hame? There is another local legend that took place slightly downstream at Cargill and involves a local lass called Jeanie Lowe. David Drummond was a butler and page at nearby Stob Hall Castle. He and Jeanie lived across the river and were courting and talked of marriage. Then, to Jeanie's dismay, David ended the relationship, for he had met another fair young maiden. He would row his boat across the river in the evening to meet his new sweetheart and return at dawn. Jeanie, understandably, was heartbroken and unable to move on with her life. Seeing her former lover with someone new must have ripped at Jeanie's heart and slowly corrupted her thoughts. She knew what time David left to cross the Tay, and when he returned, she waited until David was visiting his new lady. Jeanie made her way to where the boat was moored, and she jumped into the small vessel. She'd brought a brace and bit, an old drill for our young listeners, and she drilled 7 holes into the bottom of the boat. Jeanie then hid in some nearby bushes. Before long, David returned to the boat. He jumped in and, without a care in the world, used one of the oars to push himself out into the river. It was dark, and he was out in the middle of the Tay before he realised that the boat was taking in water. Frantically, he tried to bail out the continuous flow of water assailing the bottom of the boat, but Jeanie had drilled the holes far apart, making David's task futile. She watched the desperate struggle on the river and saw her former fiancé sink, never to reappear in the fast-flowing and merciless Tay. Jeanie was never to recover from this murderous act of desperation. It never brought any release to her heartache, quite the opposite, as the dark shadow of madness replaced David as Jeanie's lifelong companion. So there you have some stories and legends from Kinclaven Castle, a place I would definitely recommend that you pay a visit if you live locally or are travelling around or staying around the area. While you're here, you must also go and see the Meikler hedge, which is just round the corner from the castle. This hedge was planted in the autumn of 1745 by Jean Mercer and her husband Robert Murray Nairn. It's said, or local legend states, that the men who planted this hedge left to go and fight at the Battle of Culloden. They left their tools underneath the hedge and were killed in the battle and never came back to reclaim these tools. It's in the Guinness World Records as the tallest and longest hedge on earth, reaching 30 metres in height and 530 metres in length. If you've enjoyed this story, please like and subscribe. You might like to take one of our dark history tours, ghost tours, or paranormal investigations that are held in Perthshire, Glasgow and Stirling. If so, please visit our website, which is www.historyandhorrortours.com. Thank you.